Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order the East Whiteland Township Planning Commission meeting for October 28th, 2020. Our first item of business would be to stand for the flag. If do we have a virtual flag or?
Face Tim.
Tim. Okay. I pledge allegiance
To the flag.
To the flag
of
of the United States of America,
To the republic.
for which it stands,
one
one
nation.
nation,
Under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
For all. Thank you. Okay, we need to approve the minutes from our September 29th meeting. Has everybody gone through them? They're extremely long this time, but I went through them and they seem okay to me.
Deb, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 29th meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Jeff. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And the first item on our agenda is the introduction of Parks, Recs, and Open Space Plan. It's a draft plan that contains detailed analysis and recommendations regarding open space, parks, and recreation facilities, trail connectivity, land use regulations, programs and services, and organizational and financial considerations. The plan constitutes an amendment to the township's comprehensive plan, which was adopted in 2016. And I believe Steve Brown and Tim Phelps we have.
Yes.
I am here, Tim Phelps.
Hello,
Yeah.
gentlemen.
Hi, Deb. I'll lead off and then Tim can add in, but I don't have a whole lot to say, much more than you did, Deb. This plan is exactly what Deb said it is, an amendment to your comprehensive plan, to the township's comprehensive plan, and it in itself, I think it's best thought of as a comprehensive plan for what she mentioned: parks, recreation, and open space, also including trails. The plan as a comprehensive plan amendment needs to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. Tonight, the idea is to just give you a brief introduction to it, make sure you all have it, and to answer any basic questions you have. Next month at your meeting, the consultant team will be available to give you a more formal presentation and answer more detailed questions that you may have and address your comments. So this evening, you should also have a memo from me. I don't know if you've seen that. It just points to some things I believe the Planning Commission may be interested in. Obviously, we'd like you to read the entire document, but if you can't devote that kind of time, I think it's nearly 200 pages with the appendices. I tried to point you in the direction of some chapters and some recommendations that I felt would be most germane to the Planning Commission. I'll stop there and see if Tim has anything he wants to add.
No, there's been a great committee that's been working behind this for the last 18 months, putting this together. It's kind of morphed out from just an open space plan to include some of the park and rec issues for open space, and how do we tackle those items too that are incorporated in this, as well as the development of some new park sites and how we manage through that. We've had two public meetings on this as we've gone through the process, so it is nothing new to the community. At each of those meetings, we probably have had about 50 to 60 people out to those committee meetings at large. We concluded our work probably about a month ago. We've been going through the editing process, and it has been circulated for the last 2.5 weeks out to the committee, and then as well as Parks and Rec. We did receive some feedback which has provided some updates, and those updates will be some definitions, clarification of definitions for lay folks.
Thank you very much for that. I'm
So
glad you have-
John Lommer has a question. That was a good process outline. How about the outcome? Like, can you give us just a quick statement about the most exciting thing about it, perhaps?
Well, it actually puts us on a path to have the conversation about how much open space that we would need in the community to kind of be a standard. But it also then looks at where we need that open space if we want to develop other park space. So one of the things that was identified in the southwest corner of the township, there is no public space that's available at this time. So that would be an area for us to kind of explore for open space in that southwest corner.
Yeah, let me just jump in and echo what Tim said. I think that the one missing piece that we've had in East Whiteland Township is an open space plan. We have a parks plan. It's dated 2003. There was an addendum, a small update to that plan in 2015. We've done some trails planning, but what we were missing was an open space plan. So the open space component and chapter of this document, I think, is very strong. And as Tim said, it's very specific. It identifies what our overall goals are. It also provides kind of a cookbook for how to implement an open space plan, since it'll be new to this community. The other thing I do want to point out too is the Planning Commission, has a role and will continue to have a role in parks, recreation, and open space. One of the main takeaways out of this, in my opinion, is the organizational structure, which is to involve the Planning Commission, the EAC, the Open Space Committee that hopefully will be created, and the Park and Rec Board as kind of, I think we talked about as kind of as a table or a footstool or something, the four legs of a footstool. And an action team will be created from members of each of those boards and commissions to be the keepers of the flame, as it were, to monitor the plan and make sure it is being implemented. So to me, that's also a very important takeaway.
That's great. Does anybody have any comments on this at the moment?
Another kind of high-level comment, because we're just getting the intro here, is this is a very old saying from the 1800s that people don't react till their own ox gets gored. And what I'm asking is, do you actually identify parcels that would be suitable for open space, or is this a hypothetical?
As we all know, that real estate is a transaction, and it's a personal transaction that happens. So we were very careful in how we structured that conversation to make sure that we weren't putting a list out there, but we identified some places within the community that they would be appropriate for future growth.
So if people come to the Planning Commission, or in this case, dial in with questions about that, what would be a good response? What you just said?
The answer is yes.
Yeah, there are very specific goals of types of parcels or types of features that properties may have that the plan recommends that the township pursue to preserve them. Now, there's different means of preservation. You can buy outright, you can buy a conservation easement, and there's even other methods. But for example, protecting some of the parcels with environmentally sensitive features, such as the Valley Creek and its tributaries, is a high priority.
Mm-hmm.
The southern portion of the township does not have any parks or like open space available to it. So that is identified as, as a specific need. So there are recommendations like that in the document. There's also a map. I forget, Tim, if it's was a 5 acre and larger or 10 acre and larger map in the back of the plan. It just kind of identifies all the properties that are either currently undeveloped or we'll say underdeveloped in the township.
Correct, correct.
Can I ask a question on the funding? So open space preservation program is you're seeking funding, landowner contact. But with the funding, how, what, I guess, how is that being procured? Is that just through township budget, or is it also public-private partnerships, or is it, just kind of curious what the plan is for that?
Yeah, we've talked about several different scenarios about how open space has been funded throughout the Southeast PA, and had conversations that mean everything from grants to referendums and communities. That is something that the township supervisors will need to tackle when we actually start to activate the plan and begin to look at what open space is. To come back to John's statement about the list, we were also very careful because we don't want a list of people running into the township and saying, hey, here's my property, I want to sell it to you, and here's the price that I'm going to ask for you. Again, I come back to that all real estate is a personal transaction between two individuals. So we wanted to make sure that, we would be able to have that leverage for negotiation between the township and the property owner.
And I just want to elaborate a little further on Tim's answer to Tim Kelly's question. As Felt stated, there are a variety of news that are available to municipalities to fund open space programs. And the plan runs through a number of them, but that is something that we'll say the 4 legs of the table or the stool will take a harder look at, and then ultimately it'll be up to the Board of Supervisors as to how they would fund such a program. Right now, the supervisors have been setting aside some monies annually. Usually at the end of the year, most municipalities end up with what's called a fund balance, and then those dollars are allocated to various purposes throughout the community. And the board has been, the last couple of years, to my knowledge, putting away some money into what you might call the beginnings of an open space fund.
The report did mention a 0.25% potential of 0.25% income tax.
Yeah, that's possible. A lot of communities in Chester County have a dedicated tax, and it's either an income tax or a real estate tax, and that is up to the individual municipality, kind of like your ice cream, vanilla or chocolate. And that is typically enacted via a referendum. So that is a possibility.
Again, that is a recommendation that is in the plan, because it is just one of those options that has been used here in the Delaware Valley. But again, it is up to the supervisors to make and enact some of those recommendations.
Right, and it can be any amount the community deems. It doesn't have to be 0.25%. It could be a 0.1% earned income tax. Typically, what communities do is they use the money they get from the tax on an annual basis to borrow against, and then that becomes the revenue stream that pays the debt for the borrowing. That's typically how it's done. But again, there's a lot of ways to address that as well.
Well, I think whatever We do. I think I read in the report that we're averaging somewhere around $26 a head. And the average is somewhere around 36. So whatever we collect, we only have a net per head $10 that we would get to an average, unless we had a massive capital outlay in the beginning.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to, Jeff, is that is really talking about spending on parks, not really open space funding. It's really a number that's speaking towards how much general fund and capital dollars are put towards parks in the community.
Okay.
You're right that East Whiteland is under the statewide average and under the national average.
John Lawmer here with a kind of a general question. It's an up for grabs one as to who answers it. And the backstory is we went for a vacation week under this, the virus to all the natural areas we could get to in a single day's drive over the course of a week, and did a lot of walking. And wow, there's a lot of great places, some formal, some quite informal. A lot of dog walking going on, a lot of parking spaces full, especially on weekends. And it struck me that, there's two really categorical ways to think about open space. There's the leave it alone and go for walks, or organized sports. And what's been the focus of this plan? Or is it both?
We've taken a look at having both. So again, in the Southwest, based upon our population size, we should have another large park that is developed. That would be something like the Valley Stream Park. And that would be something in the Southwest. So we've looked at that. We've also looked at just pure natural land open space. I mean, Valley Stream has that opportunity too, because on the southeast side of the park itself, it is remote and wooded in that spot. So we did look at both. Even something like not that the township may want to consider, but it is not something that is happening right now. Golf courses. I mean, a golf course actually helps out with open space, but the Chester Valley Golf Course is not a public space, but it is open space. So, if there was ever a time, that could be a property considered for open space and some type of park development that would be there.
That doesn't appeal to me personally. It's just another excuse to spend money on burning fuel to mow and spray a lot of chemicals around, unfortunately. And I think the slice of the population that actually actively plays golf, Jeff, what would it be, 5 or 10?
Probably 10 to 15. But it depends on how many times you count per year.
Yeah. So, I stated my opinion, but that's a pretty small chunk of the township, and a lot of the people that would go golfing, they belong to Chester Valley and so on. So that doesn't sound too exciting to me, but okay, you answered my question.
Well, it is considered open space. It would be considered open space. And, as Charlestown did, they converted the old golf course up there back into park space. So you can see where the tee boxes are in the soccer field. So it's what I'm referring to when I say as an open space. It's just a large parcel of land that is underdeveloped.
Right.
So I have a couple financial questions. Does any of the Parks and Rec Department money, I'm assuming, there's a fund for that, since there's a fee for every new development that comes into East Whiteland. There's a Parks and Recs fee per unit, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So is that, I'm assuming that fund is quite large at this point. I don't know, but my question would be, can any of that go to fund the open space, or is that completely separate?
You're right, Deb. The fee is roughly $2,800 per dwelling. The township does not have a non-residential fee, just a residential fee. And right now, the total in that fund is basically 1.65 million. And that money is to go towards park. It can be used for park acquisition and park development. It's, to what extent, as kind of as John Lawmer was asking, if you buy an open space and put a trail in it, is that good enough? Or do you buy open space and then, put in a playground and a pavilion and a ball field? I don't really know. I'd have to go back and look at the law, but you have to use that money to build parks,
Okay.
which is what we're going to be doing. Acton Hill.
Yeah, we'll be drawing down upon that.
Let me give you, I think the report was very well done and thorough. It covered like everything, everything to think of, it covered it. So it was incredibly good. It doesn't mean I agree with everything, but there wasn't anything that made me angry or disagreed with. I'll give you, I know there's going to be a chance in the future, but when it went through every park and said, what could we do to improve it? To me, it was a little aggressive, maybe even pie in the sky. And the one in my neighborhood on Birch Road, and I think they called the development Whiteland Farms at one time. It's never called that now, but it's like a 1.3 acre piece. The stuff that was talked about was incredibly aggressive, parking, this and that. I think my view would be to tone down, make some of these spaces more passive and not necessarily have loaded up with benches. And there was even on that little piece suggesting maybe putting a path, whether it was paved or not, in a circle. It would be 1/10 of a mile. To me, that would be absurd waste of money. I'd rather use monies to acquire maybe more space, or preserve open space for that matter, or preserve open space, whether it's passive, or in some of the bigger parks if there was a pavilion needed. But some of the smaller parks that to go nuts over, I don't think it's worth spending the money.
I'll second that thought, Jeff. I live nearby too, and the people that I see using that park now very often are like grandparents taking the grandkids out to just get out of the house a little bit, things like that. Teenagers getting away from mom and dad. It's 1.3 acres.
Yeah, and this report was designed to be somewhat of that pie in the sky. It was not meant to be a master plan for the community at large. So I think as we kind of review and budget allows, there will be things that will stay and things that will never happen.
Right. So because the word, the comprehensive plan that it would be adopted is what kind of worried me. Is will some things be extracted if it's presented in the right way? Say this, we could do this. The comprehensive plan, like what is it really like? How? I mean, it's just a set of ideas. It's a guide to the future, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's where we're going. If it's made sure that it's presented that way. There was another spot regarding cluster developments. That's going to need to be looked at because to me, it seems like there's false statements in it. But again, it's like it says that we have a 30%, only a 30%. Well, we have a whole arrangement depending on acreage of the tract area. So that'll have to be looked at again too.
And Jeff, we'd love to see those. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I do get the concept with what the term density disincentives. I understand what the committee was getting at. I totally understand that. But let's just make sure we actually know what we have now and how we would go about changing it.
Yeah, so Jeff, those are really important comments, and we'd love to have those kind of some of those thoughts scrolled back from the Planning Commission, just so that we can get it right when it comes back to you for final approval next month. We'd love to see those comments.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, both of you. I guess the question, maybe it's for Steve and Tim, is what's the best way to send comments? Would it be best to send them through staff, sort of on a rolling basis as they think of them? Do we want to set some sort of deadline either before or after the meeting? we still need to evaluate sort of the calendar math on the approval process, the adoption process, but anything you guys could share, on that would be helpful.
Yes, I would say send them to staff and we'll compile them. You can read through the document and take notes and scan the pages you've made chicken scratches on and send it to us and we'll compile it. You can type up some sort of Word doc or whatever. It may also be possible to allow you to, I don't know enough about Word, quite frankly, but the way you can mark it up electronically and not alter things. And I'd have to talk to Rick Traley's at Natural Lands, but that is that a Park and Rec Board member used that technique. So there's different ways that you can comment, but yeah, they should come back through staff. I don't know what to tell you. It's not like you have to have your comments in the meeting in November. Zach's right. The adoption is going to go into the new year, whether it's January or February, when there's a hearing in front of the board. We don't know that yet, but the statute requires a certain amount of time, and that's going to force it into January at this point. So you have time to make comments, I guess is what I'm saying. You don't want to put it off too long, but
And if you can make the comments in the next 2 weeks, then when Rick makes his presentation in November, he would be able to address some of those comments for you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, thank you so much, guys. I think it is an awesome plan. And I hope that all of us can go through it and add some comments for you.
And I got to say, guys, it's really a great pleasure to talk about parks and open space as opposed to, development.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. I know I'm proud of the committee, and I think they put a lot of thought into it, and the consultants collaborated with the committee really well. And I think it's a very good document too. And when we get to implementing it, John, hopefully you'll be talking more about parks and open space and trails, just as the plan envisions.
Yeah, thank you, Steve and Tim. That's an incredible amount of energy to put that together. Thank you.
We had a great committee, so all the thanks goes to that committee, and I'll relay that to them later on with an email.
Right.
So if there's no other questions, thank you, Deb, for allowing us this time, and good luck with the rest of the agenda.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.
I second.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
With that, I'm going to go ahead and, unless there's anything more on that, I'm going to go ahead and let in the first group of applicants, and then we'll get them in before we introduce it this time.
Oh, sorry.
All right. Looks like everyone's logging on here. We have Allison and Joe. Frank. Okay. Take it
Good.
away, Deb.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our development applications. Our first applicant is for 514 Lap Road, Builders, Inc. It's a preliminary final land development application to construct an 11,150 square foot office/flex building with an internal driveway, parking, and stormwater management facilities. The property is located at 514 Lap Road and is within the Office Business Park District.
But it sounds to me like somebody still has the live stream on in the background. If they wouldn't, whoever that may be, wouldn't mind closing that out, it'll kind of reduce some of the feedback and the echo.
Yeah, I don't want to hear myself twice. And who's here for Builders Inc? Who's gonna speak?
Allison Zaro is here. Good evening, Deb. Good
Hi,
evening,
Allison.
Commissioners. I also have with me Joe Ursella, who is our from the Civil Engineering Office, DL Howe and Associates. My client Greg Hill is joining us via cell phone. And
Correct.
Frank Chavani should also be on. I don't know. Yes, he is on. Who is our traffic engineer. And this property, my client, Builders Incorporated, is a general contracting company. Their headquarters are currently located in Havertown, and they've been looking for a site for quite a while to relocate, and they found 514 Lap Road, and they are wanting to move their headquarters there. So 514 Lap Road is actually an undeveloped parcel in the Great Valley Corporate Center. It's on the southwest corner of Lap Road and Old Moore Hall Road. And believe it or not, it was never developed by Liberty. It's been vacant for many years. It has a stormwater management basin on it, and that's it. So it's about 2.73 acres. And Zach, I don't know if we have the site plan, but I think that would be helpful. I can just give everyone a little bit of an overview of what's on that, if we could pull that up.
Sure. I'm going to bring up the Chesco views, the aerial map, just to kind of orient people quickly, and then I'll switch over to the site plan if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
So switch to the site plan.
Yeah, so right there, you'll see there's this existing stormwater management basin that serves a portion of the corporate center. That is going to remain, and this project isn't really using that basin. It's there, it'll be maintained. If anything, they like to clean it up a little bit and make it look a little nicer. My client actually liked the idea of having a water feature on the site, and when we get to elevations, you'll see how the building's oriented with respect to that stormwater basin.
Interesting. How many acres is that, Allison?
So it's 2.7 acres, and the building that's proposed is 11,150 square feet. So, it's not, it fits well within the site since it's a corner lot. We have the building pulled back. It's not, obviously not rectangular. So it's pulled back towards the stormwater basin. You'll see sort of in the center of the site, there are 45 parking spaces proposed. And we have two access points. The main access, which is a full access, is on Lap Road, which is at the top of this plan. And then there is a right out only exit onto Old Moore Hall Road, which is on the right side of the plan. So you can see that. And I will say that, originally we had shown a sketch plan, and we'd even shown a sketch plan to the Great Valley Owners Association. And they have since seen and reviewed this layout, and everything, the loading dock, which is in the back, sort of at the rear of the site, so it's on the bottom of the plan, was in a slightly different location. And they're very supportive of the project, but they asked that that be oriented to the back of the site. So that's one of the reasons for that extra right out only onto Old Moore Hall. It just helps with maneuvering with respect to the loading in the back of the site.
Zach, do you mind going back to the aerial again? I just want to get oriented again where it was.
Sure.
Do you know where Chemlon was, Jeff?
Yeah.
It's right before you get to Chemlon's site.
Yeah, it's right next door to that. So Jeff, across from there, that on Old Moore Hall, that's part of the lands that Philadelphia Suburban Development Corporation, that would have been the Great Valley Revitalization Overlay District, is what that, what's on the other side of Old Moore Hall that has not been developed.
Okay. Where's Chemlon, just to get me oriented properly?
Is it right next door?
Where it was, it's True Green now.
It's True Green now, yes, it's right next door.
All right, I know where I am now. Okay, I got it.
And then Sarah Care is right across the street on that corner.
Yep.
So, and what is it your clients would be doing on this site in this building?
So they're a general contractor, and this would be where they have their main headquarters. So there will be an office component to it. I mean, generally they'll have their clerical and, you know, administrative offices in the building, and they will also have, you know, people that come there in the morning and then leave and go out for the day and go to various job sites.
Right.
Greg is on the phone. He certainly can give you a little more information about their business in general and what they do, if you'd like to hear a little bit.
No, I get the idea. There'll be some equipment and people and maybe some construction materials. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah, ideally they don't like to keep store things on the site. That's not the idea, but they're, you know, and Greg, you can speak to this, but from time to time, it sounds like there may be some deliveries there.
Yeah, so basically, first of all, when we talk about equipment, there is no machinery. We're general contractors. We're not site contractors. So when we say equipment, we're talking about baker scaffolds or gang boxes or hand tools, and they would all be stored inside in the building. Other than that, the building, the office staff consists of our estimators, our clerical, our accounting, obviously, and project managers. And that's who would be there basically on a daily basis. Whereas the project managers come and go, they may not even end up at the offices during the day. They may be out visiting their jobs that they're responsible for. But sometime during the day or during the week, they will be in the office space.
It's a perfect, well, in my opinion, it's a perfect location for your use.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you're not going to be taking delivery of a lot of materials there, so there's not going to be a lot of big truck traffic, just, you know, work vans and so on.
That is correct. And actually, when the deliveries we do take, we'll get some FedEx and some UPS. But if Tim Wheeler were to come in there, it's typically dropping off some toilet accessories or some product that couldn't be delivered to a job site that we'll have to take in and then put in a pickup truck and ship out to the job site later. But we don't take, obviously, we're not loading our space with, you know, framing materials or rock or anything.
Right. Well, it looks like a pleasant location, and if the neighbors are pleased with the idea, this John speaking for himself, looks good to me.
Yeah.
So we do have, we did submit plans and get review letters back, and then we resubmitted. So we're sort of like in an interim cycle on that, but we wanted to come to you and, you know, present the plan. And, you know, we can go in, there were some specific comments as it relates to multimodal improvements in the area that we did want to go through with you tonight. But I would say in general, most of the comments in the review letters will comply, and, you know, some of the plans have already been cleaned up. So the plan you're looking at is actually cleaned up in response to, for instance, the landscape consultant's comments, but we haven't gotten a new letter yet. We did get a new letter from Arrow on the 26th, and there's several stormwater waivers we're requesting, and then everything else in that letter is it will comply. But I did want to raise and discuss with the Planning Commission a few comments in McMahon's letter, and they've actually done two letters. There's a September 14th letter, and there's a October 1st letter. We had to make sure that we demonstrated adequate site distance to McMahon, and I think we're able to resolve all of that. But in the September 14th letter, there's several comments about the multimodal transportation plan. And as I know, the Planning Commission is aware that there was that new section that was added to the Saldo recently that talks about implementing certain things in the multimodal transportation plan and map. And as you can see, this is a pretty small site. So I wanted to just walk through the various comments on that and talk to the Planning Commission about what our thoughts were about how we could address some of those items, particularly with respect to this project. And I think Chris Williams is on this call as well, if he has thoughts about this. But the first thing is the old Moore Hall is classified as a minor collector, and our traffic generation, which Frank Tavani could speak to, doesn't generate the need for any road improvements. So our thought was, we are going to offer the 35-foot wide half width that would be required along Old Moore Hall, so that ultimate right of way would be shown. The second component of that, though, is the multimodal transportation map would envision a bike lane along Old Moore Hall, and we're not proposing, and we're talking about 125 feet of frontage on this site on Old Moore Hall, and considering that there's other planning and other redevelopment that may occur in the area, our preference would not to, we were not proposing to do that widening as part of this project. Essentially, everything would be designed and the ultimate right of way would be there, so that if that came through in the future, if it was even appropriate on this side of the road, it would be there. But we were not planning to install that bike lane and shoulder at this time, just along this frontage. The second part of that is, there's a second and a third component. So there would be a sidewalk planned along Lap Road, which obviously is the more significant frontage of the site. And we are showing the area and everything is again designed to accommodate the sidewalk. But our thought was, rather than installing it now, and of course, Greg's company would be fully capable of doing that, but it might make sense to wait and essentially have a condition or a covenant that would be provided on the property that would, have required the installation of that when essentially everything in the area is planned, everything comes through, make that connection at that time. And then finally, this site is also identified as being part of a multi-use trail that would connect. And Zach, perhaps you can speak to this a little better, but I don't know that it actually is known how it will connect yet, since it would be connecting to other sites that are, sort of in the works for development. So again, there would be no issue with offering an easement for that trail, but we don't know where that trail exactly is going to be yet. So I think it would be an offer of an easement that would be, so that the trail could be installed at the time that that connection is figured out.
Yeah, I can speak to that just briefly. I'll do a new share here with the multimodal map that the ordinance references. Just give me one moment here.
While you're doing that, Zach, let's all think about, does this site, is it in a place where employees would want to go for a walk for lunch to anywhere, or is it kind of on the edge of Great Valley and really that would be silly? I don't have a context.
They can walk right up Old Moore Hall to Chick-fil-A, Starbucks.
So it is possible.
Yeah, and I would also offer that eventually Lap Road is going to, with another development project, be extended to intersect with Route 29 and provide a connection to the Valley Creek Park. So we do want to preserve those opportunities, not now, but for the future.
Right. Yeah. So let's think about that more broadly after Zach has his say here.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll just orient everyone to the site here. Again, how do I do the little annotate thing again? So the site is right here.
Right.
You can see that. And ultimately, I think the goal is to try to get across from Mill Lane near the Township Building and Complex and the Chester Valley Trail, across the Knickerbocker site, as I'm outlining it here, and then up Old Moore Hall, and if and when Lap Road is extended to intersect with Route 29, a trail could ultimately be extended across 29 and into Valley Creek Park. So where this property factors into that, of course, is that the way we've envisioned it, sort of the path it takes across the Knickerbocker site is to be determined. There's some engineering and some environmental features that need to be accommodated. But once it gets to the eastern end of that site, it basically ends up on this property. So getting just a little bit north and a little bit east, it seems like what would probably happen is it would sort of dump out where this property intersects Old Moore Hall, and it would kind of go up the Old Moore Hall frontage before then meeting up with Lap Road and going across. So again, I think for the purposes of this project, if we could, not preclude or accommodate that project in the future, once the other bigger projects fall into place, I think is really the goal.
Yeah.
Rather than just having, a 10-foot or an 8-foot wide strip of asphalt that doesn't really accomplish a whole lot at the moment.
So I have a question. Wouldn't their Act 209 fee take care of that for the size of the property?
The 209 fee would be, so 209 funds can only be, they're collected based on the number of new trips that are generated in the PM peak hour, so rush hour, evening rush hour. And they can only be used for, it's called capacity enhancing traffic improvements. So new travel lanes, intersection improvements, all the things that are outlined in our capital plan from the 209 study. As of right now, those funds cannot be used for pedestrian improvements, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. All right.
Long-winded answer, I know, but I just wanted to kind of frame it.
So what are the options here? It is what it is.
So I think what Allison has outlined, I think are good compromises in the interim. I think we, again, half the battle sometimes with these types of projects is securing the right of way, securing the rights to be able to make a connection. Obviously, funding and construction are no easy task sometimes either. But I think if we can set ourselves up in the future, once these other projects or these other improvements fall into place, I think that's a good outcome on this project. That's my personal opinion.
So then what Allison outlined for us would be a mechanism, I think she may have used the word covenant, to set aside those bits of land where a bike lane and where a sidewalk could be, would be in line with what you're speaking about, Zach.
Well, let me outline for you what I generally do if you're going to be deferring these improvements. I generally ask that a note be placed on the plan saying that they're deferred and they have to be put in at the owner's expense within 1 year from when the township gives them notice. And then I also ask that the applicant engineer the plan and show where the improvements are going, and then have the deferral for a year, or a year after the township gives them notice. So you want to make sure that it's turnkey, ready to go. The grading is set up the way it's supposed to be set up. Whatever stormwater is associated with it's accommodated for. And then all you have to do is give them notice and they just install it.
Yeah, and I think that's easy for the sidewalk, and we certainly can do that. I think the issue with the trail is that nobody knows exactly what that trail connection is going to be or where it's going to go. So, I mean, otherwise we would be fine with doing that. I think part of the issue is, since it's conceptual on this map, we don't know if it's going to be, a tiny little corner, if it's going to be in right of way. That's the issue on that one.
Can't we figure out, Zach, where we want the trail on this plan?
I think we could drill into it in a little more detail. I mean, I think, again, on the Knickerbocker site, there's a lot more moving pieces. But I think the goal, no matter what, would be for it to empty out. Essentially, like this end of the trail is probably about how it's going to be. So I think we could at least conceptually lay out the old Moore Hall connection and just make sure that, your site grading, your stormwater, and all the things that go into that could at least, be sort of set up that ultimately if the trail comes through, it'd be more a matter of just laying down the base and doing the pavement rather than having to regrade around your entrance. I think that would be more the concern on the township side, is having to undo work that you've done.
Right.
But I do understand the conceptual.
It's a small parcel, so I can think we can get that done without delaying the approval of the plan.
Yeah, and I mean, from our perspective, I think from Greg's perspective, that I think we would prefer to have certainty on the site too, to say, okay, this is the area where it is, so that he knows in the future it's not interfering with his operation either when it comes through.
Can't the proposed sidewalk be the trail? Like,
The sidewalk's on Lap, and then the trail connection is sort of supposed to be in the back of the property along Knickerbocker. So, yeah, yeah, that would be great. We would be happy with that. But
I mean, like, yeah, can you cut across that stormwater, that existing stormwater thing, and make that the trail, tie it into the sidewalk, and then be done?
well, that existing basin is a corporate center basin and the owners association. I think, I mean, it's like almost right on the property line. I think we're talking about a connection that would be closer to the sort of the southeast corner where the secondary access is on Old Moore Hall, and sort of cut down through Knickerbocker.
Right.
Yeah, I can sketch it here a little bit. So the sidewalk would be along the front.
Yeah, you can actually, that dotted line is where the sidewalk would be installed, exactly what you're highlighting right now.
And I'll just,
It seems to me the trail on the Knickerbocker property, Knickerbocker actually butts right up against Moore Hall. Those dots, if you went back to it, run right into Moore Hall. And so all you got to do is go up Moore Hall to get towards your running parallel. Yeah, that's it. It seems to me that's where the connectivity would the most logical would be, because you're going all the way to Moore Hall anyhow, or Knickerbocker. So that general location, we're literally under the canopy of that first row of trees.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
You know, ideally, if I could speak to that briefly, and it would be great, Zach, if I was able to share my screen, but I'll just speak about it. Although what is shown graphically would be the ideal way to have that trail, there's a significant change in elevation on our side of the road that on the other side of the road is much flatter, more conducive for a trail, and has a little bit more area. Our driveway that comes up and intersects Moore Hall is almost at a little over 7%. But just in general, in that short area that Allison pointed out, we only have about 100 square feet. In order to grade that in, we would really be losing a lot more trees, and it would be very, I guess it would be difficult to grade in that 8-foot wide trail in addition to the widening improvements. So although I do understand that the Knickerbocker Trail would come and need to get to the other side of the road, it would seem that if it came up parallel to our southern property line and then crossed the street and then existed on the eastern side of Moore Hall Road, it could be more accommodating to that trail than it would on the western side of Old Moore Hall Road in our property. And I'm not saying that to get out of it. I'm just saying that from the limit, the constraints, and trying to preserve that corner with material. There's a lot of existing trees that we're retaining and adding trees to give up a lot of ground for an 8-foot trail, plus the widening associated with it. And there's a lot of, and also too, along our property frontage, there's a significant amount of utilities. There are 2 utility poles and a lot of overhead lines that would need to be moved to accommodate that. Just food for thought in that perhaps providing the funding or some other mechanism than to have it be built there. Just something to think about for if it's going to be a trail that would be used. That the whole western side of Old Moore Hall Road is encumbered by steep slopes and drop off. In addition to that, there is an old railroad crossing that constricts the width of the road just south of our property, and it's on both sides of the road. And then as you go around, as you head up towards Chick-fil-A, again on the western side of Old Moore Hall Road, it's very steep, especially when you get to the landscaping use and the auto body use. It falls off probably right at the edge of road. It goes down about 10 to 12 feet. The other side of the road, the eastern side, again, much safer, much wider, much flatter to accommodate those future pedestrian needs.
Yeah, I
Well,
certainly
why
understand.
don't we have Daryl? Why don't we have Daryl go out there, look at the constraints of the site, and between Daryl and Zach come up with a tentative location for a trail, whether it be on this side of the street or the other.
Sure.
It seems to me we can get to the bottom of that before the plan gets approved.
Yeah, let's not try to do it virtually. I agree.
No, that would be rather difficult, and I'm happy to meet them out there. You know, Google Earth Street View is a great tool. If you can't get out there, it's relatively accurate. It's only a year old. It kind of helps you a little bit visualize what I was talking about. But I think a live meeting, at least, or driving down there would be a better way to really experience the grading that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Joe, along those lines of Google, so I'm looking at that, and that would be roughly 2 pedestrian street crossings within 160 feet in a commercial area.
Yeah, that would be again, I understand the issues, but that would be my concern as well, is that not only is it potentially a mid-block crossing, there just seem to be a lot of turning movements in that area. So just one thing that we'll need to look at when we go out there. I agree, we don't need to hash this out tonight, but I'm glad we were able to at least get it out on the table and kind of get the creative juices flowing, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So then I guess the last thing we did want to show you, we do have some elevations of the building. I'm assuming everyone is curious as to what it's going to look like. So Zach, if you could pull them up.
Can do that.
When you're doing it, what are the existing structures on that property? Are they this?
So there's some existing stone ruins. They are not on the historic resource inventory in the township, but we have been talking to Zach, and Zach's been talking to the historical commission just to trying to find something out about that. And to the extent that Greg can, they may try to utilize some of that stone in either a decorative wall or some sort of wall on the site, or as part of the signage. Signage I'm not sure about, because we also have to get Great Valley Owners Association approval for the signage, but that's the idea. They're just stone ruins.
It's a nice little building.
You know, with respect to the building that you're looking at, if you're looking on the right-hand side next to the entrance, which looks like it's a projected wood entrance, on the right-hand side projecting from the building is a stone seating wall. And the idea was to try to incorporate some of that existing stone to create that wall, that low projecting wall that Allison's talking about. So that was one of the ideas, to use some of that stone. It is in very, very poor condition.
It's probably old limestone, eh?
Yeah, you know, trying to take that apart and chip the mortar off and reuse it, you know, where it's possible, that would be the idea. And
yeah, that stuff weathers pretty seriously, so just try your best.
And Jack, I think we do have a couple other.
Sure, yeah.
This shows you, so this is the back, there's a deck, and then the stormwater basin is on the right side of the plan.
Really a nice looking building.
Yeah.
And then there's another view.
I got a question. This stormwater basin, it's pre-existing. Is it serving the True Green? Also, it's a shared basin that has extra capacity for the future development, which would be this?
Well, that may have been the idea some time ago. But since it's such an old basin, and since the stormwater requirements have become so much more stringent, we're not relying on using that for the stormwater that it may have been intended to. Like for instance, for the rest of the park, that is their stormwater management. There wasn't any infiltration, and it serves a good portion of the upper lots. But because we couldn't quantify it, we're not using it that way. So we're much more conservative in our stormwater and what we're putting into that existing basin.
Joe, would you mind just reviewing the stormwater for the commission, what you are proposing?
Sure, I'd be happy to go over that. Zach, maybe a better plan to show would be the grading and utility plan, if you can access that. So in the middle of the parking lot, you'll see a large rectangular area, and our stormwater consists of an underground stormwater management and managed release concept. Early on, we did a lot of investigation of the subsurface features here. We did a geotech report, a phase 1, but the geotech report yielded that we have karst geology, sinkhole laden, geology under the site. So we designed it this underground bed that meets the requirements of DEP, and it's a managed release, which basically has a sand filter underneath the bed that acts as the infiltration component. So we're managing all the stormwater in our post-developed condition, and then releasing it at a much lower rate, and then putting it back into the basin then it will be discharged eventually into the creek. That's really the stormwater management 101, but it's an accepted concept that is endorsed by the conservation district. We've used it on another site in East Whiteland for the GMH project, for the apartments where we had similar geology. That's a much larger, there's actually 3 systems there, but the same concept. And that's what we're proposing here.
So the existing basin, is everything up to par on that as far as its outlets are concerned, and it matches your engineering?
Yeah, from what we found, from what we surveyed, there's a weir that's on the lower portion of the site. I mean, really, the basin, except for the overgrowth around it, which we intend to clean up, seems to be operating the way that it was intended to. We didn't see any indication of significant erosion or any sinkholes. All of the structures that lead down to it, those older basins were just, besides the fact that this one's, is a retention basin, it has water in it, we're just really designed under older rates that really controlled the higher end storms, really didn't address infiltration or the requirements we have today. So really it operates fine.
Well, who takes the long-term management of that? Is it the HOA?
The owners association maintains it now, yes.
So it's, Joe was basically alluding to the fact it was a bit overgrown. It's a bit of a concern that maybe they're not actually watching it. We need to, I'm sure you're going to clean it up right and get it right, but going forward, we got to make sure that the HOA is paying attention to it.
Well, I can't speak to them. I'm sure that they, that they do see it, but now that this site's developed and it is our intent to not only to beautify it, that there'll be more attention paid to it because it's more visible. The site itself is just overgrown. That won't be the case. It'll be a much more, younger vegetation, new vegetation. Again, too, even with the development that we're doing on our property, we're actually reducing the runoff that's getting to it from our site now. So, yeah, I guess Allison could speak better to that. But now that we're involved with the project and there's an owner, I'm sure that the onus of responsibility doesn't just want to fall on Greg, and share that with the rest of the owners that are contributing to it.
Sure. And I think the difference is now too, I'm not sure how Liberty operated the owners association in the past, but Workspace, who's the controlling entity at this point, has hired Bright Realty. So there is a professional management company involved now in the operation of the owners association. And I know just based on other dealings in the corporate center, they have been following up with various property owners that may not have been, trimming things back or doing things. They seem to be more engaged in that process. I think it is helpful that they do have a professional property manager.
Okay.
I can tell you one thing. There's a lot of geese that love that property.
Yeah.
On the road, and they just take their time going across the road. I used to take my mom to Sarah Care every single day, drop her off and pick her up. And that's a very busy traveled road, actually. But the geese are crazy over there.
I have a question in respect to the landscape portions. The first one's for Joe. It's just kind of anecdotal. It says in your, I guess, landscape letter on the fourth item, it says that plan is also engaged a certified and nationally recognized arborist to assess and inventory all existing trees on site. I'm just curious personally who that might be.
That was John Hosback.
John Hosback.
With JH Trees. So yeah, there was a report that we put together on the existing condition plans, numbered the trees, and then he inventoried them because we wanted to know what we were up against with with the vegetation. Some of it just overgrown scrub. There were a lot of dead trees, and so we wanted to make sure that we knew what the trees were and if there was anything that was significant.
Now, I know John Hosback, and I would respect his opinions for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Allison?
That's all we have tonight. As I mentioned, we had already submitted cleaned up plans, and we'll keep going, and we'll have further communications with staff just to figure out where this trail piece may be going. And we'll clean up, and then we'll be back to see you hopefully for a recommendation.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I'll just make one comment. I mean, with that trail, like just looking at Google Earth and stuff, and it just seems like if you ran it out, like especially with that right turning lane, that exit, like it'd be nice if it could come out the west property. Like if you could make some sort of agreement, the west side of the property out to Lap Road. I mean, it just doesn't, with all the work that you're doing, it seems like it would impact your usefulness of your site. That's just a comment. I mean, something.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Zach,
Thank you.
Do we need to ask for any public comments or?
So we've been monitoring the public comment email box. I'll let Brittany chime in just in case something just recently came in, but as of a few minutes ago, we did not have anything.
Okay.
We're still no comments.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
See you next month.
Thank you. So we'll give everyone a minute to log off here. I'll go ahead and let in Chris Daly, who's the engineer for the next applicant. I'm going to guess that the other unknown names are associated with Immaculata. So when we get to that agenda item, we'll let those folks in.
I'll take a 2-minute break. I'll be right back.
Sure. Hey, Chris, good evening.
Hey, Zach, how are you?
Good, good. We're taking a quick time out.
Okay.
And then we'll introduce the plan and let you sort of kick us off.
Is Steve Demarco on here?
So I don't see Steve. There's a K Davis, and there was a Mark W in the waiting room, and I wasn't sure who they were.
Oh, okay.
If you have a minute while we're taking our brief time out here, do you want to give Steve a quick call and see if he's, or shoot him a text maybe?
Yeah, let me reach out to him.
Okay. Everybody's in?
I believe so. Chris is contacting his client just to see if he's able to get on or having any issues. Other than that, I think we're okay to kick off and introduce this next agenda item.
All right. Yeah, I shot him a text.
I don't see John yet.
Oh, I didn't notice John Lomer also stepped away. So we'll give it just another minute. Apologies for the delay. Anybody watching from home?
So I just found out, Zach, that he's logged in under K Davis.
Perfect. All right, then I can let him in.
The mystery is
Especially-
solved.
Right, yeah, at long last.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I'm glad that worked out. I just assumed it was maybe a random number. That's why I wasn't too eager to just let them in.
I think Todd, is that Todd joined us?
Yeah, Todd has joined us.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Hi, Todd.
Hey, Deb.
Okay, everybody's in now, right? No, John Lomer. We're waiting for
I'm
John.
here.
Oh, John, there you go. Okay, our next applicant is for 403 Ton Road, Demarco Real Estate, LLC. It's a preliminary final land development application to construct a 16,476 square foot office / flex space building with internal driveways, parking, and stormwater management facilities. And the project is associated with a previous conditional use application from 2019 for disturbance of steep slopes and a zoning hearing board application related to perimeter setbacks. The property located at 403 Ton Road is within the industrial district. Who's up?
Hello, my name's Chris Daly with DL Howe and Associates. I'm the engineer responsible for the preparation of the site plans for this project. Also, in addition to those approvals, we also obtained a minor subdivision approval for this where we consolidated lot 10 of 3 Ton Road into lots 9 and 11. Lot 9 is our property that we're dealing with. And it involved a lot line change also. So this property is located on 3 Ton Road. It's a private road. It's at the very end in the cul-de-sac. It's exactly what you described. It's an office warehouse building. There's associated parking, loading, and there's a driveway associated with it. The conditional use approval we needed to obtain involved steep slope disturbance. We went back and forth a couple of times with the board where our initial submission involved disturbance of essentially all of the steep slopes on the property. We tried to meet halfway with the board, which involved installing a large or proposing a large retaining wall and cutting the steep slope disturbance in half. And we essentially got the approval to do that. We've gone back and forth with the reviews several times. I think the review letters we have, the latest review letters we have are probably the third round that we got, which are, I think, relatively clean. We've already submitted to the Chester County Conservation District as part of the NPDES permit. And I received a phone call from the engineer down at the district who informed me that essentially all the comments have been addressed except for an inspection schedule comment that they had with regards to how many times we need to inspect the stormwater facility. I made that change, so we should be receiving the NPDES permit shortly. With regards to the planning module, I believe that has, Zach, do you have any update on that? Has that gone to DEP yet for review?
I would have to double check with Chuck on the review of that.
Okay. So I think we're pretty far along with that. And Steve, do you want to talk about the use that's going to take place on this property? If you're on.
Yeah, so essentially right now we have a lease in place with Mid-Atlantic Mechanical, which you guys know is my other business. So essentially it's going to be just used as warehouse. We're at about 6,000 square foot that's currently leased. So that's kind of the intended use as of right now. The other half is currently being marketed as flex warehouse space, but I'd venture to say it's going to be something in and around the same use, some sort of warehouse space or flex space.
Okay.
Yeah, so on top of that, we also have 6 waivers that we are requesting approval for. I can run through those.
Hey, Chris, this is Daryl. I'm sorry, this is Daryl. Before you start your waivers, there was a question asked about comment 6 under stormwater. That's the MRC comment. Just want to confirm that you don't have any issues with addressing that.
Yeah, I spoke to Gavin about this comment, and he said there was, he wasn't exactly sure where the invert of the pipe was, and I showed him that the invert is actually above that orifice, and he made it sound like he's okay with that.
Okay.
With how it's designed.
Thank you.
So with regards to the waivers, waiver number 1 is actually a zoning requirement. However, there's a provision in there that will allow a reduction in parking to be approved by the Board of Supervisors of up to 35%. So we reduced the required parking by 21%. But we are still showing them as future spaces where in the event, the building ever needs those spaces, they can be built, and the stormwater management was designed for those spaces being impervious. So we're proposing a reduction in parking. The second waiver involves sidewalk along the frontage of the property. Yep, those are the parking spaces there that are circled. In addition to, removing those spaces, we're going to propose some additional plantings to help supplement our landscape plan. Number 2 involves a sidewalk along the property frontage. We are requesting a waiver from that, considering that most of the lots have been built on 3-ton road and none of them have sidewalk. So that's why we are requesting that waiver.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, just because it's maybe a little disorienting on this plan. It's actually the property's on a cul-de-sac, so really the only frontage would be this. The other line shown here is a future right-of-way in case that road were ever to need to be extended. So it would just be, actually, really, it would just be these 2 little stubs on either side of the driveway. So. Just to put that in context.
Thanks, Zach. Number 3 is a waiver from a section that requires that no more than 20% of the trees on the property be removed. This entire lot consists of woodlands, so we're proposing a significant reduction of trees on this property. So we are requesting a waiver from that. Our landscape plan does propose tree replacement at, the maximum possibility we can by, installing trees in every location. We have not yet updated the landscape plan to reflect the reduction in parking. This is the landscape plan that was submitted in a previous submission, but we will provide those changes with the next submission.
If I may speak, I have a little bit of an issue with this waiver. This is Peter speaking. I'm concerned with the steep slope, and if it isn't, I think it has already been cleared of trees, but if it isn't properly replanted with trees, there's going to be not so much rainwater issues, but erosion issues that are going to arise without the trees holding the hill as they've done for however long they were there before.
Yeah, with regards to the steep slopes that are going to be disturbed and where the trees will be removed, we are proposing a very large retaining wall that's going to have to be designed by a structural engineer, which will ensure slope stability there. The very minor tree disturbance just above the wall is there to construct a stormwater swale to properly convey any runoff that comes from those steep slopes along the wall into an inlet that's going to go into the stormwater facility.
How many trees have been removed already there?
I don't know if any have.
Steve,
could you speak to that?
Are you able to elaborate on that? I know that there were some trees sort of at the very front of the property. Not the whole site wasn't wooded, at least the last time I was out there, but which has been the case for a while, I believe. Has there been any subsequent tree removal out there?
Probably about 3 or 4 months ago, there was some trees cut down, but nothing in the last couple of months. Probably not since the last submission, I wouldn't think. But we definitely cut some trees down. Probably, I would say maybe March. I would say something like that.
So you cut down all the trees, or just some
not
of the
all
ones
of them,
at the front of the site?
Yeah, there was an access that was brought in. So we kind of made a construction access, a little bit of a road in there so we could just get in and out. So yeah, we cut some down the front.
Again, my concern is just with the removal of trees, the erosion, the lack of rainwater being caught by the trees. I understand all the rainwater is going to be captured by the stormwater management, but that still leaves the potential for the hill kind of to erode. That's where I'm not really wanting to waiver on the reduction of replacement trees.
Okay.
Chris and Steve, I don't know if you guys have any ideas for how to maybe offset that. I know that the site is tight with what's being proposed and how many trees need to go back just due to the, let's say, like the thickness or the density of the existing wooded area. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
And again, this is, I may be misspeaking because I don't have as great an idea judging the topography from this sketch versus the realistic possibility of putting trees in those areas.
Jack,
If it can be done, I'd like to see it done before attempting to grant this waiver. I am having difficulty kind of at a Google Earth image. It might help a little bit because.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest, Peter. I'm looking at a Google Earth image on my phone, and it is a very heavily wooded lot.
Okay.
So I don't think they'd be able to offset 1-to-1.
Well, I don't see the way this request for a waiver talks about looking for relief of offsetting trees. They're just looking to be greater than 20% tree removal. Where's the request that you're looking to not plant?
So, yeah, there's some more detail on that in the landscape review from Land Concepts.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I have that plan. Here we go.
So what he calls out is that the plan calls for removal of 193 trees, which is 51.3% of the total.
Yeah, so it says there's 43 trees missing on Landscape Concepts.
Right.
Yeah, that's not spoken about. That's the reason I missed it. It's not on the DL Howe waiver request letter. Doesn't talk about that. I don't see it.
No, I don't have that level of detail in the waiver request.
Jack, would you be able to pull up the grading plan to show the limit of grading behind the proposed wall?
I'll pause temporarily just on this sheet here because it's the tree plan. And so you can see that the darker outlines are the existing that are to be removed, and the lighter gray ones sort of on the edges are to be retained. So some of the ones uphill in the actual areas of steep slopes are mostly to be retained. It's more, well, not all of them, of course, but the ones sort of inbound of this area and closer to the site, front of the site, are to be removed. Let me keep moving on to the grading plan here.
Chris, I don't know the scale on that plan, but can you estimate what the distance is between the proposed retaining wall and the limit of disturbance behind it? Is it
Yeah, hang on. I can give you a dimension on that. Yeah, it ranges between about 6 feet and about 25 feet.
Peter, just to give you some context,
Yeah,
they're not disturbing, 100 feet behind the wall.
Okay.
It's pretty
That
limited.
does give me better context.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Maybe
sorry, I don't actually have the
envisioning
limited
too
disturbance
much
shown
of
here.
a clear cut of the lot, and then
So it appears that in your landscape plan, you might be planting what appears to be some understory trees to an existing, underneath the drip line of existing big trees. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Well, again, I can't sit there and do the scale here, but if it's 6 to 25 foot, all these new circles that look like buttons and screw heads and everything else, it appears you're planting it in undisturbed areas, which is fine by me.
Right.
I mean, I don't see a problem with that, especially if they're nice understory trees underneath large trees. As long as you don't totally disturb the roots when you're planting them, that's another story.
Gotcha. Yeah, we are proposing some trees in the undisturbed area. I can understand the confusion there. It looks like we're disturbing all of that on that lower right portion, but we are not. We are proposing some trees within existing trees. Obviously, it'll be very minor disturbance when they plant the trees. Care will be taken in planting those trees.
Yeah, it's like I don't know the scale, but so the issue really is that you're, in theory, 43 trees short.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there's any more quality understory trees that could be put in. And I also know from reading that, and it made sense, there's a non-existing road there, so they're going to need to grade. So it doesn't make any sense to be planting trees up where there could be a road and have them, they could be destroyed. So it's just like, where could you possibly put more trees?
Can that be mitigated by planting on some other property that the township owns, like a park?
It has been done in the past. Yeah, there's been other development projects where they couldn't physically fit all of the trees that were needed for replacement. So they did offer them for planting at township parks and things like that.
I don't mean to push for that. My concern is the erosion of the slope, and if there's nothing to hold it together, that's my concern mainly. And again, it's tough for me to gauge what's there and what is to be there and how much that'll cover. So I guess excuse the excuse the ignorance there.
Will the trees that are in the right of way be taken down? Because again, from Google Earth, and it may be an old picture, it seems like it's very wooded. So if the right of way never happens, will those trees be disturbed?
No, I mean, can you go back to the grading and utilities plan, Zach, please?
Yeah, one sec.
No, so yeah, the extent of those contour lines, those proposed contour lines, are the extent of what we will be disturbing. So any trees that fall within that right of way will not be cleared, and anything that's right up against the property line, we'll try to preserve as much as possible.
Yeah, so likely that number, that I know that not everyone's fixated on that number necessarily, but that number will likely come down a little bit as they plant some trees in the areas that they're holding for reserve parking. So again, some of the areas in here, I believe over here along the back of the property, there may be some opportunities. So that number will come down, but they're not quite meeting the total number.
Why would you plant trees in an area that you're going to propose parking?
Well, I mean, I won't speak for the applicant, but it's. I guess the idea is that hopefully you don't need it. For this type of use, I think our parking requirements are pretty hefty. My guess is that those parking spots will not be needed, but if they are needed someday, if there's a parking issue or a new tenant's coming in that requires more parking, they're basically designed to not preclude those areas, and the stormwater basins are already designed to capture the runoff from them. But if they're never built, I mean, why not? You know, you'd be losing a tree, but I'd say the chances are probably higher that the tree
Correct.
stays.
Yeah,
in
currently we have no need for those parking spaces. We don't have any intention of putting those spaces in.
But I guess like I would say, like, why put a tree? Why wouldn't you just like seed it for grass and grade it, seed it for grass? If it's like, it seems like ultimately there's a possibility of more disturbance having a root system disturbed than having grass in that area or whatever, or even a stone bed or something.
Yeah, I mean, we would prefer that, absolutely, but you know, given the shortage of trees that we need, the 43 trees that we can't install, we're proposing that as an option to plant them in those locations, since we don't need those spaces.
You know, it does seem like it makes sense that we could put these trees or get some kind of fee in lieu of. To overplant is an issue too. I mean, I could see us fitting maybe 10 more trees in there. But after that, you know, a reasonable fee in lieu to use it somewhere else in a park or something. You know, this ground can be stabilized without planting trees. Erosion would be the first order issue, and the other would be whatever trees do to attenuate rain, precipitation. You know, good quality turf cover, ground cover is not far behind trees. So got to be a pretty reasonable remedy to this.
I agree.
So are you proposing that your driveway will still continue around the building? You just won't have the adjacent parking spots in that area where there's 7 spots?
That's correct. Yeah, the driveway will still be constructed, but some of those spaces, the dashed spaces, will not be constructed. It's hard to tell on that plan. I should zoom in. Yeah, so those 3 spaces at the top, just above the building, will not be constructed. The 5 spaces near the entrance right there will not be constructed. Those 2 spaces at the end there near the loading area those 2 parallel spaces will not be constructed. And then those other 2 spaces there, just off the upper right corner of the building, will not be constructed.
And then will your curb line be established there in all those areas?
Yeah, the curb line will be constructed as if those future spaces will not be built. The curb will have to be modified if those spaces were to ever go in.
What was the total number of parking spots, or spaces that you're removing? Proposing?
14. We're required 66 parking spaces. We are proposing to only install 52.
It seems like I do expect tractor trailers to come in there. It kind of just seems tight with the direction of the flow that getting around.
No tractor trailers will be coming in there. There'll be more like box trucks that would come in.
How can you guarantee that? You're doing warehouse space? No tractor trailers? Really?
Yeah, I mean, the tenant's not going to, I mean, they'll see that bend in the driveway and it's going to be very difficult for any truck to make that maneuver.
Yeah, and I can also speak from my end of it, knowing that my business is going to be one of the tenants. We typically don't take big tractor trailer deliveries. I can't speak for whatever other tenant would take the other side, but my intended use wouldn't require any tractor trailers.
And you're taking up how much of the space?
I think we're around 6,000 square foot of warehouse, running around there.
Is your dock the back right, left corner?
Yes.
And that 17 foot is the width of the lane?
Yes. Just a one-way lane.
Changing gears, I have a question in regards to the fire letter from Brian Willicombe. Have those items been addressed with him?
They have not yet. I believe Steve was going to reach out to the MEP engineer with regards to the flow tests. I don't think they've been conducted yet. And I'm looking at that plan right now.
My understanding is that the sprinkler contractor's engineer was going to do that as a part of their, do that review as a part of their contractual work. So I think they were going to supply that.
Yeah, it's definitely something we need to make sure gets addressed as part of the land development process. I know sometimes items like this do get deferred to building permit, but with, being a private road and knowing that the current configuration of hydrants and things like that, I think we want to make sure that that is addressed during this process and that there's no ripple effects on the site design or anything like that. So the sooner you can get some of that flow information and we can determine what the fire flow needs and all that are, I think the sooner the better.
One more question for you, Chris. On the Pinoni letter, on the third item, what is the invert elevations? What does that have to do?
That just has to do with where exactly our sanitary lateral will tie in. We made an assumption that, it's 4 feet deep, which is a typical minimum requirement. But,
from the manhole down?
Yes.
Okay.
But obviously, for it to be constructed, we want to know exactly where it is and show it on the plan.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What are you guys looking for tonight?
Well, we were actually hoping for a recommendation for preliminary / final approval, obviously with the condition that we satisfy the outstanding review letters, mainly because there's only a handful of comments that we feel need to be addressed. And we have full support from the reviewers for the 6 waivers that are being requested.
How's everybody feel about it? Are you,
The waivers sound okay. I think there's some other outstanding things that need to be addressed still and that aren't, but not completely warm and fuzzy, I guess, would be my answer.
I'm generally pretty much okay. I'd like to hear something volunteered by the applicant about these trees. We're 43 trees short. I'm not trying to load up the property with the trees, but it's like,
Yeah, so, I mean, Chris and I spoke about this. I mean, the intent would be to plant as many as we could in every space on the site, and then if we don't make the overall number, we'd be okay with the fee in lieu, or if that's kind of the way we're going with this. But obviously, the ideal situation would be get as many on site as we possibly could first before we did that.
right.
Joe, is that something that we should have also noted on the plan or?
Well, we don't do fees in lieu, and we don't have an ordinance for a fee in lieu. I think he just needs to volunteer to plant them somewhere else on township property.
And I'm okay with that.
Okay. I think we can find a couple good candidates. We have Backton Hill Park that's in need of some landscaping as part of a master plan that we're doing. So I think we can coordinate on that if that's something you're open to.
Yep.
Problem solved.
Right, so that's not something that would be in the recommendation.
It can be.
Oh, okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
We would likely spell something like that out in any approval resolution, similar to, always being conditioned upon satisfaction of the review comments. We generally bake those types of things in as conditions of approval.
It should be.
Well, I'll make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
Any comments?
Well, I thought we were done. Okay, you got any more?
From the audience.
Public.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Zach, or
No, sorry, no public comments, no.
thank you.
I didn't mean to cut you off there, Jeff.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to approve the preliminary final land development for item number 3 here, which is the LD 10 2020 for 403-ton road. I'm not going to repeat all the narrative, but I'm going to make it contingent upon the approval of our township consultants, engineer, landscaper, et cetera. And also based on the fact that the applicant has volunteered to take the balance of trees and put them on some other property that could use the trees within the township, could be a park or somewhere designated by our Board of Supervisors or our staff.
Do we have a
I'll
second?
second.
Todd's a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chairman, I've got to take my leave. I've got an early visitor here.
Okay.
Ringing my doorbell.
Bye.
Trick-or-treaters, probably.
They're telling they're 2 days early.
Is East
All right.
Whiteland having trick-or-treating?
I hope not.
Oh, John, come on.
Son getting home from college.
Oh,
Can't cancel it.
Can't cancel.
Tell him to put a face mask on. Yeah.
This, can I have a question? Ask Joe a question, or Deb or whoever. Does the township code allow for funds to be put in escrow for trees and or like sidewalks in the previous plans?
We do escrow for trees and sidewalks as part of the land development agreement.
Right, okay, yeah. So with respect to the sidewalk, if you give whatever, some period, when you write a letter to a developer and say, all right, now it's time to put in that sidewalk, that escrow fund is released upon.
No, that we don't escrow for, because they may never get a letter saying put in a sidewalk.
Yeah.
And it could be 30 years from now where they would get the letter. So we don't escrow for that, but we put it on the plan. The plan runs with the land. And under the second class township code, we can order a landowner to put in a sidewalk anyway. So
Right.
the plan note just serves as notice to future owners that they may be liable for that.
Okay.
I got another quick, based on the last plan. Joe, you said we don't offer fee in lieu. I swear we had something for the parks and open space where we had a fee in lieu if they could not have have an open space in a residential development, for example.
I'm with you there, Jeff.
Yeah, I swear I thought we had
We
something.
used to do it all the time.
Well, that's a fee in lieu for open space. That's not a fee in lieu for trees.
All right, well, you said, and I quote you, we don't have a fee in lieu in this township. So I get that for trees. I do get that. Okay.
Yeah, I was referencing trees.
Okay. You're really going out on a limb on that one.
Ah. If he buys the trees, I'll volunteer to put them in at Backman Hill Park.
Yeah.
That sounds
Are
good.
we waiting for the next applicant? What are we doing?
Where's Kerry?
Zach here?
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh.
Let me go ahead and let them in, and then we'll introduce. Give me one moment.
So John's gone now, right? John Plummer left?
Yeah.
Left
So we'll just
the
note that in the, well, I don't know that we have to note that in minutes. I'm not sure if there'll be any more motions or not. So
He held on just long enough.
it looks like our next group of applicants are connecting to audio. We have Carrie Jones with Immaculata and Brett McKay and Neil Kamens with Chester Valley Engineers. They're the civil and landscape for the applicant. So we'll just give them a minute to turn on their mics and their cameras, and then we can introduce the next agenda item.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Deb.
Have everybody? Neil's on.
I'm having trouble with my front camera. I can show you a picture of my wall or.
Been there, done that.
See, I can do that. I just can't.
It's a nice wall. I mean,
would that be considered
really nice wall.
wainscoting?
Okay.
Daryl, is that wainscoting? I need your engineering perspective on that.
I was going to ask if that's shiplap, but that's.
We call it beadboard.
Beadboard. Oh, there we go.
Yes, and we have a little chair rail on top of it. It's actually the old working student guest room, so people could put things on the chair rail without putting holes in the wall. So it was very useful till we built an apartment and got the teenagers and 20-year-olds to not have to live in the house with us.
Okay, so this applicant is Immaculata University for a science pavilion. And it is a preliminary final land development application to construct a 15,369 square foot building containing new classrooms, laboratory, and office space to replace existing facilities elsewhere on the campus. It's located at 1145 King Road, and it is within the institutional district. Who's up first? Gary?
I think Neil was going to, unless we
Yeah,
lost.
I can start off first.
Okay.
You want to put up, Zach, that PDF I sent with the images? I think that'll be the best to show people what's going on.
Sure thing. Give me one moment. Would you like to start with the rendering or the site plan?
Just start with the rendering. I think that give people a feel what's going on, then we can go to the site plan.
You got it.
Thank you.
Is everyone able to see my screen?
That is our 15,000 square foot, 1-story science building. And as Zach mentioned, there are no new students proposed. Right now, there are labs in Loyola Hall, which is right nearby. And they're going to replace those with new labs in here. And they're going to use the old lab space for some new labs and some new training facilities for nursing students. So it's going to enhance the educational existing students get, but we're not going to have any new students. We're not anticipating it does anything other than get us some advanced equipment and up-to-date things. And Carrie can speak a little more about that in the future. Do you want to go to the next page, Zach, and we can look at the site plan? So very briefly, this is at the bottom of the page is Alumni Hall. So King Road is further down the page. The baseball field parking is to the left, and then the baseball field past that. This is the area that had the temporary classrooms, if any of you were familiar with that in the past. We had temporary classrooms there that were removed a couple of years ago, I think. So since we're not adding any students and we don't need any new direct access really, we're going to use the existing parking around. We're going to have sidewalks that connect it to stuff. We're doing a small stormwater system that's that dashed underground. Well, this thing says underground stormwater bed right in front of the building. That's the main takeaway. We're going to connect to the campus. Has their own sewer system, their own sewer treatment plant. Things like that. We will get most of the deliveries will come through the system that campus already uses. So there won't be direct deliveries to the building, but when there are, we're going to utilize one of those existing parking spaces for a loading space, or that driveway down to Alumni Hall at the bottom that looks like a combination walkway is also goes to a little entrance on Alumni Hall. They can use that if they need to get a truck out of the way. That's the main thing. I figured Carrie could give a good idea and a little more info on how the building is going to be used and such. And then Brett McKay from my office is also here with me. We could go through issues in the letters, answer any questions, talk about waivers, whatever makes the most sense.
Thank you, Neil.
All right. Can you hear me? So the impetus behind this building was primarily the fact that we've always had nursing. We've had a 2-year program, and then we had a graduate program. But what we didn't have until a few years ago was a 4-year Bachelor of Science registered nurse program. And we acquired that when the Brandywine School of Nursing went out of business. And as of last year and this year, we are now the 4th ranked best nursing school in the entire state of Pennsylvania, and that's out of 44 schools. So we're proud of that, but we'd like to be number 1, 2, or 3. And to do that, we need more modern science facilities. The facilities that exist in Loyola Hall are almost as old as me, and that's pretty old. They're going on 60 years old. So again, the idea here is that our curricula is shifting. We have less students taking liberal arts and some of the other majors we used to have, more students taking nursing. And also we've added some allied health sciences to our curriculum, and those programs require a lot of science classes. So we need state-of-the-art laboratories. The labs in Loyola Hall, there are 8 of them. 4 of them will be abandoned and more or less probably converted to classrooms, or we're not even certain exactly what they'll all be used for. A couple of the other labs will be allowed to exist with some modernization. They will primarily be research labs. So there are professors who currently do research in the same space that they're trying to teach. They'll have less interruptions when they're doing those long-term experiments. And then a couple of the labs will probably become additional nursing simulation labs. We have 2 or 3 of those on campus now, but we need a couple more. That's where, you know, you have a hospital bed and you have these animatronic people laying in the bed that you can work on and learn nursing without having a real patient there. If you can, Zachary, flip to the floor plan, I can describe what's inside the building. Oh, geez, that's really small. It's a small building. Basically, most of the building, as you can see, is made up of these labs, and they're not gigantically large labs because our class size at Immaculata is very small. Some of these classes will only have 10, 12 students in them. The average lab in this building will handle 18. There is a total of 7 labs. 4 of them are related to biology. 3 are related to chemistry. There are no real classrooms. There's a small group lecture room. So when it says classrooms, that's a little bit of a misnomer, but you can see kind of on the bottom towards the left side, you'll see there's a small group lecture room that's to be used in conjunction with some of these labs when they need to just take the students in and show them a video or speak to them more directly. Of course, there are some gang bathrooms. There are 5 small offices. Those are for 5 of the professors that will be in the building most frequently, so that they have a place to see students and work. And there's a small collaboration area for those offices. And the rest of it is support spaces, mechanical space, a lot of support spaces for the labs, prep rooms, and so forth. All 7 of the labs will be what we call wet labs, state of the art. One of the problems we have with Lola Hall, and the reason we're not just renovating labs over there, is that the floor to ceiling heights are too low to allow us to put in state of the art equipment and to allow us to have the flexibility in future years when things change. So by building a new building, a single story building, but very tall, we'll have that additional floor to ceiling height that lets us make changes and run ductwork and run all these special systems that they use in a chemistry or biology lab. That pretty much describes the inside. There won't, as Neil said, there won't be too many deliveries to this. We probably receive 1 delivery every semester. Sometimes I would say maybe more every 2 to 3 months, where they bring in pig cadavers and other chemicals and things that they need. And then at the end of the semester, they're taking all the used pig cadavers and other animals and waste chemicals out. And occasionally there'll be, you know, some new equipment come in. One of the interesting things about these labs is that we are going to be one of the first schools in the country. There's only probably a handful of schools that have this. We've already purchased what's called an animatage table. And an animatage table allows a student to dissect a human being without having an actual cadaver there. It's all a computerized human being on a table. And as they cut through the different layers, it peels down to each of the different organs. And it's very exciting, and we're thrilled to be able to bring that to our nursing students. Usually nursing schools don't use cadavers because there's a shortage of them. Medical schools for doctors and so forth have them, but we're going to be able to educate our nurses to the same level with this animatage table that some physicians and doctors would be educated with. And that pretty much explains, I think, what we're doing with the building. As Neil stated, this does not change our enrollment. In fact, our enrollment is significantly down from where it was 10 years ago when we did our last traffic impact study. Our parking, we've already got adequate parking based on our last parking study. We had some leftover spaces, and those spaces are just enough to cover all the parking needs that the square footage of this building would create. So I'm just trying to think if did I raise any questions, or anything else you want to know about the use of the building?
Well, first of all, it sounds like a really cool facility. And Obviously, it's a good thing that Immaculata is coming up through the ranks. I'm assuming that you are looking for the relief. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the Chester Valley Engineers letter, and the three things that are listed on there. One of them is the traffic impact study. I'm assuming because you don't see an impact here because you're not increasing your students, and there's not going to be any added nighttime students to this program to use these facilities. I'm assuming.
No, we provided a letter to McMahon Associates and to Zachary earlier today from the president of the university that talked about some of our student enrollment counts. And so the only additional employees at all trips in and out of the campus would be a 0.5 or half of one full-time employee to clean the building and a quarter of one employee to help maintain the building. So essentially, again, there's been a shift. There will be a different faculty than we might have had a few years ago. And you may have just seen the one of our news announcements where we just hired 6 new faculty members in the county to help fill some of these needs as the nursing program is growing so rapidly right now. But the overall student enrollment is the full-time equivalent, which is expressed in that letter, has gone down, down, down. In the last 2 years, we've been bringing it back up, but it's still 1,000 students, full-time equivalent students, less than what it was 10 years ago.
We met with Zach and Chris Williams yesterday to walk through the items in Chris's letter to make sure we understand what he was looking for and go through things. And, you know, not to put words in anyone's mouth, but I think we're comfortable with requesting a waiver from the traffic study. We're working with the township on how to provide additional right-of-way along King Road. And then we're thinking that based on both what we think and the feedback we got from Zach and Chris, that actually doing any widening on King Road, because the cartway varies right now and might not be the width that the ordinance says, is something we're okay with not doing for a project of this scope and knowing what's going on today.
Yeah, I've discussed a lot of these comments, especially the road widening comments, with our public works director. I don't really think there's any need on any of these surrounding roadways for widening. Not all of them are, like, you know, set up to our current ordinance, but aside from King Road and some cut-through traffic on maybe Fraser Road occasionally, and I know some of our members are more familiar with that neighborhood than I am, I don't really see a need for road improvements. I don't know that we'd want to widen the roads and encourage cut-through traffic, for example. King Road may be something, and I think there's been some recent infrastructure projects there. The right-of-way likely is more for other types of projects. If the state wanted to come through and do a road improvement or roadside drainage projects, you know, those things, it sets us up for success in the future, but I don't foresee any projects. So I personally think that those waivers are not a tall ask, but we will work through some of the finer points of that.
I think we should put a roundabout in at King and 352.
I think we should put sidewalks in.
Just kidding, just kidding. Just kidding. And more seriously, I wanted to ask Carrie or Neil, what would it be considered, would you, since it's not even built yet, would you consider installing an upper room UV lights to sanitize the air? Since, you know, obviously airborne viruses are of great concern these days. Maybe Daryl could speak to that.
I can speak to it from the university standpoint. Right now, first off, this building will have the best indoor air quality of any building that we have on campus, because A, it'll be the newest and the codes require that. And B, because it is a science laboratory, the air exchange rate that we have to provide is so large that the students will be breathing a high dose of oxygen and fresh air, and then we'll be using some sort of program, some sort of equipment to recycle the heat so we don't lose it. And there's a couple of different ways to do that, and we haven't settled on which mechanical system we're going to use. So that will definitely be the case. As far as treating the air to kill bacteria, viruses, and so forth, there's a great debate right now amongst all of the HVAC engineers in the ASHRAE Society, and I've been reading up on it, and they themselves are just not sure what the right thing to do is. The dust hasn't settled. There's some scientific data to suggest that lights work. There are filtration systems that work. But then again, what is the efficiency of these things, and how effective are they? It's all under consideration, but it's hard for us as a small university to just, to pull the trigger on one thing or the other when our engineers don't even know what the right thing to do right now is. So anything we would do would be, taking a little bit of a chance. We do know that the filtration systems work to some degree, but the higher the filtration rate, of course, you cut down on energy efficiency and you make it more difficult for those exchange air rates that we're trying to accomplish in a lab. So we have a lot of fume hoods, and those fume hoods put the building under negative pressure and are going to require a lot of fresh air, and that's what makes this an additional challenge. We would probably, in terms of a lighting system to kill, the UV that they're talking about, that would probably be better in some of our older buildings as a way to retrofit something in. And I know that our facilities director was looking into that before we let our students back on campus. And again, there wasn't enough scientific evidence that said that it was worth the expenditure. So in some of the places we've put better filters in, and we've done a lot of other things. We've changed the pressure in some of the rooms to try and keep the air moving through faster. But we haven't put any of the UV lights in yet anywhere.
To hear you're considering all options.
At this point, we're considering all options. And if something came to the forefront between now and the time this thing breaks grounds and it's a clear winner and it's economically feasible, then that's what we would probably go with. I can honestly tell you right now, if you call up any of these engineers, they'll tell you they just don't know, because they're all seeing and reading different things. And they take their cues from the American Society of Heating and Refrigeration Air Conditioning Engineers, ASHRAE, and ASHRAE doesn't have a clear path yet. So I don't know I know that's not the answer you probably want to hear.
No, it's an answer. I've heard about it. I've read about it a little bit. I obviously don't know the science findings on it, as it doesn't seem many people do.
I know it works very well on water. Air is a different subject matter, and a lot of it has to do with the amount of time that the light is on the air and the particulate matters and the small viruses as they go through the ductwork. Mm-hmm. So there's some questions as to efficacy.
Gotcha.
They do use UV light. They have used UV light for years on swimming pools and hot tubs and all sorts of things where they're trying to sanitize water. So it may be coming for air too. I just don't know yet.
Any other questions?
Basically, looking at the Google Earth on your property, it shows when the trailers were there. So this structure would be basically 2 times the size of when the trailers were there?
I don't know if it's that much bigger. The trailers had 4 large 30-student classrooms in them, 2 gang bathrooms. Let me look.
Looks like 5 trailers.
Looking at the picture, I would say yes, it's about double that size.
That's what, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Those trailers were put in back when we were had a much heavier student load.
Gary, can you talk about the parking a little bit?
Yeah, we had when we applied for and received your recommendation and approval from the supervisors for the West Campus housing, by the time we got to that project, and there's to be 5 of those buildings in total. Right now, there's 2 housing buildings. There's a 3rd building that was built that looks just like the housing, but it's in fact our student center. And there's 2 more remaining to be built in what we got approved. And when we were done seeking your approval for those and went through all our parking, we still had an additional, and I don't have the number right in front of me, but I think it was about 70 parking spaces were left over by the strictest standard. There were 2 different ways of calculating it, but by the strictest standard from the parking study and all they had done at peak times and so forth, we had about 70 spaces left over. And I think this building, Neil, correct me if you're wrong, you guys did the calculations. I think this building requires 61 spaces. Is that correct?
That's right.
So again, we've discussed this with McMahon Associates, and I don't know if Chris is on the call here still or not. He was earlier, but we're pretty much in agreement that there's plenty of parking, even if we were to go back to the year 2010. Bear in mind, we're 1,000 less students in the year 2010. So we don't have nearly that parking demand. You won't see any of our lots filled up right now like you would have. You might have seen some of them close to full back in 2010. You won't see that now, even at peak times because of the enrollment being down. But if and when we someday reach that level we were in 2010, we have those 70 spaces and we need 61, and that's what we were figuring.
Okay, thanks.
The reason why we located the building where we did too, so it would be close to ADA parking and loading and some of the new parking lots that we built down near the baseball field.
Okay, thank you.
There was a massive parking lot enlargement program that we embarked upon way back in, I guess it was 10, 12, 13. We built not only all those parking lots that you see surrounding the baseball field, but we also built another parking lot between Gabriel Library and Loyola Hall that you can see towards the back of our property up the very northern. Keep going up, keep going up. No, not that one.
Right.
Over to the right a little bit, right there. That one was all new too.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions or?
Neil, were there any other waiver requests engineering wise?
There's several that were in our letter that went through that Daryl looked at them. They're almost all related to the limited scope of the project. Brett can probably go through them one by one if you want us to, but Arrow did write a separate review letter just about the waivers where they recommended approving all of them.
There were several regarding stormwater, which again, are not an issue. We've recommended approval on those on other projects. So yeah, we don't have any concern with the waivers. We're recommending granting all of those.
It's a very short letter, Daryl.
Yes.
And it's a small project, and they did a nice job, Neil and Brent.
We are, just so you're aware, this is the one thing I can't promise, but we are going to make the effort next week. We don't own the land. The Sisters and Servants of Immaculate Heart of Mary own all the land. We simply lease from them. Even though we're associated with them, it's not our land. And we're going to request of them next week that they consider allowing us to put and correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, a continuing, I'm trying to think of the terminology.
Offer of dedication.
Yeah, continuing offer of dedication to expand the right-of-way on the northern side of King Road for the length of King Road, because that would be the one property that if ever there's a trail to go in, it might go there, and or there might be infrastructure or road widening someday. And so we would have, I personally would have no problem, and I don't think the university has any problem with putting that on the plans, but we would need to have the sisters approve that. And if they give us that approval, we'll certainly ask to put, we'll put that on the plan to help make the township feel a little more comfortable going forward. If they tell us no, then we'll have to come back to you and request a waiver from that. I don't foresee any reason why they would tell us no, but you never know.
All right.
The only other waiver request is related to the multi-use trail that's shown along King Road. And in all fairness to the applicant, that's a fairly large project and probably more of a long-term project. I think if we're able to get the right of way and we've got a working relationship with Immaculata, we know that they have potentially future plans that may be able to accommodate a bigger project like that as part of the land development process or as part of a co-application on a grant. I think asking the applicant to build, essentially, 1,000 or more feet of, probably well more than 1,000 feet of trail is a pretty big ask at this point, given that it doesn't really connect to where it ultimately might someday. So that's the other waiver request, and I think that's probably a reasonable request.
I agree.
We have also discussed with, and we had actually hired McMahon Associates as our consultant a number of years ago. At some point in the future, we'd like to do something with our bus stops. And when we do that, we had talked about then granting a physical right of way to PennDOT as our, in lieu of investment in the deal, so that we could get a tip grant or something to put those bus stops in, put some calming features on the road so that our sisters who walk between the mother house and university and students can cross more safely. And that would be the time, I think, to be looking at the whole thing a little more comprehensively and maybe trying to work the trails in with that, if that's where the trail in fact wants to be.
Any other members have any other questions about anything? Are you looking for an approval tonight, Carrie?
That's up to Neil. Of course, the sooner the better. We want to break ground sometime in the spring. One good thing I can tell you is, unlike some of the other projects, and Deb, you've been around with me for a lot of these projects, and we come in and every administration wants to do something and then they don't quite have the money or something happens. This project is already 90% funded through donations from alumni, and other friends of the university. So we're very close to having all the money. So this is definitely a going forward project if the township gives us all the green lights.
I don't want to turn down action, but we're close to, we wanted to get any input from the Planning Commission. We got Daryl's comments a good bit ago, so we worked through those. We just got the ones from Chris. Our thought was we would revise the plans, a little bit of changes we have to do, clarify the waivers, get that back, and come back to you next month. That way you could make a recommendation. We'd have what probably is the list of waivers we'd go to the board with to make it simpler. Rather than if we tried to deal with something now, I think it might be a little confusing that we'd be, there's some waivers that based on the review letters we don't need. And then there's some others that we, in going through things with Chris, we need to add. So I think that might be the best path to come back one more time.
And we will know the situation on that right-of-way agreement on the north side of King Road before next month. We'll know that next week, in fact.
So Neil, I think we talked about this briefly, but the November meeting is a little earlier in the month due to Thanksgiving. So if we're to have fresh review letters, or at least some, I'll say a spot check on some of the outstanding issues, we would need that resubmission pretty quickly. And even at this point, it's a little marginal on whether I could guarantee review letters.
Yeah,
certainly do our best as always.
Yeah, I was thinking we're expecting we could get things in hopefully on Friday. And I think since we've gone over stuff with Chris, and then since we've already kind of addressed the comments from Arrow, and Daryl's office was super speedy in doing that last time, if we can get things to, I just think that would make it easier for the Planning Commission. And then consequently easier for the board because they'd have a recommendation that matched the waivers we need.
Right.
Okay. Sounds good to me. If there are no other questions, maybe, do we have any public comments on this?
No, no public comment.
Thanks.
I'll make a recommendation.
They're not looking for a recommendation. They're going to come back next month. I know we're not used to hearing that, are we?
He meant to adjourn, I think. I think that's what Peter meant.
Yeah. So thank you, Carrie and Neil and Brett. And with that, I guess we can adjourn unless we have any other business to discuss. Zach's got nothing?
You're all getting easy passes tonight.
All right.
All right.
Have I announced my new job to everybody?
No.
I am, for a month now, I'm the newly appointed chief arborist at the Morris Arboretum of the University of Pennsylvania.
I saw that online. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Peter. That's awesome.
Wow, cool.
Can I get you to come by my place and look at my trees?
Your fruit trees? I'd love to.
Does that mean you're a retired climber?
No, I still get to climb.
Ah,
The pressure isn't there, though.
okay,
I set my schedule.
great. And that's a full-time job.
Full-time job. I have a desk and
Wow.
everything.
Awesome. Congratulations.
And people I'm in charge of, which is very new. Keeping
Welcome
them
to
busy.
being a boss.
I'm a boss. I got to keep them busy. No one's sitting on their hands on my watch.
You're new.
That's all I have.
This too will pass.
All right, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Carrie. We just talked
Thanks.
amongst ourselves. All right. Thank you all. I guess have a good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Meeting adjourned.
I'm not used to getting out this early. It's crazy.